At a basic level, this could, in fact, be one of the most important applications of blockchain and one of the most important uses of blockchain. So as we'll discuss on this panel, the blockchain, in one view, is a massive collection of data that is growing all the time, which is a perfect source for the use of artificial intelligence. We have a large but excellent panel. I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves. We'll go through, we have a number of topics to discuss. If we can, we'll try to leave some time at the end for questions, but it is possible that just given the size of the panel, that we'll be covering so many issues that we may not have time to do that. But with that, let me turn it over to the panelists for a brief introduction and then we'll get started.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to be panelist here. My name is Ken Huang, last name Huang. I run a company called Distributed Business Applications and essentially help the small startups to help them grow in blockchain space. So my interest in the AI is really how AI can enable blockchain and vice versa.
Hi everyone, my name is Sajjan Eric. I'm working as a research scientist at Baidu Research, and I'm focusing on artificial intelligence research for mostly different long-term applications. And here I am representing more from artificial intelligence perspective.
Hi everyone, my name is Ilya Eckstein. I'm a researcher at Google Research, focusing on conversational AI, and prior to this I ran a startup in the same field. I'm not quite an expert, but more on the ML especially AI side.
I'm Michael Zarkum. I am the founder, CEO, and lead researcher at Block Science, a research and analytics company working with startups in the crypto space to understand the applications of machine learning and optimization to the data sets that they're creating. I run a small research team that does both paid and internally sponsored research.
Hello, my name is Raymond Yang. I'm the founding partner of the VC fund called West Summit. Our office not far from here on the Sandy Road. Also, we have a team in China. We are traditional VC, but certainly one of the reasons I'm here is to try to embrace this the new concept of the new, I consider, new revolution. And our fund, one of the things that differentiate than other funds in the Valley is that we have a very strong so-called cross-border China angle. So we try to be the bridge between the U.S. company go to China, vice versa. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Kames. I'm with Canvas Ventures. We look at fintech and emerging tech, so blockchain plus AI is right up our alley. And before Canvas Ventures, I turned an old military vehicle museum into a hacker house. We had 8 founders working on everything from underwater robots to self-driving cars to social enterprises built on the blockchain. So I'm excited to talk to you all today.
Hi, my name is Syed Arij. I work for Walmart e-commerce. I'm a director of product management there. So pure play e-commerce guy here. I think I'm here because of my natural intelligence and not artificial. So that's me. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Rashmi Gopinath. I'm a partner with Microsoft Ventures, primarily focused on cloud infrastructure, AI/ML, and cybersecurity investments. And we are interested in evaluating companies that are at the intersection of AI and blockchain.
All right, for the panelists, let's start off by, again, a lot of you come from an AI background. Some of you also have significant blockchain backgrounds. But tell us from your perspectives, what is a great application? How do you see the intersection of blockchain and AI? How is AI going to be most effective, at least in your views of the world? Let's start over here.
So if we think about AI, it's primarily more around centralized data sources, centralized models, centralized intelligence, typically held by a close set of vendors. So if you think of who are the leading AI vendors today, think of Google and Facebook and Microsoft, Baidu and other folks that typically have really large amounts of data sets that are needed for training this data.
Oh, actually, I apologize. May I interrupt you one second? Because I made a mistake. I'm so sorry. I was supposed to ask the audience questions, and I did not mean to, but
No worries.
thank you, I'm so sorry. So, questions that we wanted to ask the audience. How many people here own coins? Any kind of crypto? Okay, excellent. How many people here are with companies that have nothing to do with the blockchain, but are thinking of getting into blockchain? How many people? Excellent. How many people here are with blockchain companies? How many of you folks use AI already in your businesses? Okay. I apologize so much for interrupting. You'll forgive me?
I'm glad I didn't get into all of it. So talking about AI and blockchain, so we talked about AI. Blockchain on the other side focuses more around a decentralized model. And so one of the applications that would be pretty interesting is how can you use blockchain to decentralize AI data sets or AI models and really make it more open and available when it becomes more of a marketplace. And so you don't have the situation where there's limited amount of companies that have access to these training data sets, and you're making that more open and more available, and hence you're creating this crowdsourced marketplace kind of an effort, but it also becomes easier for each of those actors that are contributing their data or their models to then monetize what they have. So that would be an interesting application for blockchain and AI.
I'll keep it to AI, like I promised earlier. Typically in a retail world or an e-commerce world, one would order a product online, and that would get shipped out of a fulfillment center, let's say in Florida or somewhere in the East Coast. It might travel like 400 miles, 500 miles before it arrives at your doorsteps. Now, with AI and the quantum of data that we are getting now, companies are getting smarter about how to use that data for demand-based sourcing, if you will. So based on the demand, companies are trying to come up with these pop-up fulfillment centers and warehouses, which can house probably a handful of units for a brief period of time, and then they vanish. So that is the kind of application of data, trying to mine it and intelligently serve the customers. That's the state we are in at Walmart right now.
I have a question for the audience. Raise your hand if you know what a GANs is, a generative adversarial network. Okay, we've got a couple. So basically, it's a new AI tool. You have one algorithm that's creating fake data and another algorithm that is annotating the data and helping the other algorithm create fake data. And people are starting to use it in editing videos. So videos are becoming fake. Who's seen the video of Trump or President Obama that's basically a puppet for someone else mimicking his face? You've seen those videos? Well, I think in the future, a really interesting application of blockchain is going to be to combat fake videos and all that fake data by hashing it to a blockchain. And so it's actually going to fight AI. And so that's what I'm interested in. So if you're working on a copyright or authentication app on the blockchain, please talk to me later.
Well, I'm coming from the VC background, and also I want to be a little bit controversial here, because when we talk about the blockchain, there's two concepts here. One is called the tech knowledge. I think we've got the smartest mind in the world and some of those people. But the other blockchain is talking about, I would say, paradigm shift, which is the new world. So in the sense, when the question was posed to me in the early days, I was thinking AI is one tool, one of the tools, but blockchain, where cryptocurrency is considered as a new paradigm, is not even at the same dimension level of talking about that. It is like you're going to a completely new universe, then you're talking about you have a new way of doing something. However, now I gradually understand that now this conversation, we're at the more technical level.
I want you to go first, because if I do mine, then what you said before won't make sense.
So here's a case study. We have a company. It's just one example, a new emerging platform. Well, we can call it an AI platform, but really it's about collecting all the data that's relevant to transportation, based on that, offering transportation service to anybody in the world, horizontal platform. That if it grows big enough, as it has been, it basically controls who goes where and when. I want to go to Google headquarters in Mountain View, but Uber is really in the position to decide when that happens and which route I'm taking, et cetera, et cetera. That's a lot of power, right? That power may be more than money, or equals money. Do we want, as a society, to give one player such power? Maybe, maybe not. So if we don't want that, maybe there is a way to build a truly decentralized platform where there isn't a single overlord, where people can contribute data or resources such as their cars, their time, etc. And there is some algorithm that's completely open. The data may be encrypted, but the algorithm is open. It's completely clear to everybody what that algorithm is. And you can, just as you can sign up to mine some coins, you can sign up to contribute resources to that platform, whether it's your time as a driver, whether it's your money as a passenger, whether it's your computational power. So, question is, can we do that? Do we need blockchain to do that?
So I think this is a really interesting use case, and in fact, the version of this problem that I'm most interested in, and I think is going to be a sort of quote killer app for the blockchain plus AI sort of communion, is to do this for M payees and N payers, like a coordination market where instead of having one service provider and one service consumer, as would happen in the case of Uber, that you have a case where you have a group of specialized resources coordinating to contribute to a central task. The reference example that I had is actually residential construction, where currently that coordination task is fulfilled by the general contractors. The specific contractors, the plumbers, the sort of how, I apologize for not knowing the domain language. It's the subcontractors who are fulfilling all of the sub-services are essentially coordinating for both scheduling, what they're willing to be paid, and when they're going to act to achieve a coordinated action for which they will collectively be paid and take some portion thereof. This is a N-to-1 version of this problem. There's a project actually based in the Bay Area that's exploring the production of a system that would actually allow subcontractors to coordinate by broadcasting when and what they're willing to do for how much onto a chain, and then have an AI system responsible for blocking them into shared tasks, and in turn having the system validate the fact that the AI's contribution is a acceptable, like blocking, that no one's rules that they've committed to were violated. This appears again in an education context with teachers and students, where this time the consumers are at party.
Can we hang on there? Let's go through the group.
Yeah, sorry.
No. We're kind of moving on to a second version of that. So let's just go through once.
Okay, so others have mentioned the improvements in the data collection frameworks, and I think that it's also very important. And I would like to just emphasize that for most major artificial intelligence applications, they are still improving with more and more data. We are not hitting the wall yet in any of the major applications of artificial intelligence. And I think in general, both cryptocurrency mining and artificial intelligence model development burn a lot of energy, and I think that like if we can intersect them in some meaningful way, it will be very impactful.
So my thinking is the potential killer app is really AI blockage as service. Handful on his idea is really the business process in an enterprise. It involves multiple AI service. Maybe one can provide by Baidu, another provided by Google, right? And so if you have a brokerage service on the blockchain, the beauty of that is it can basically, the data provenance is secured. It's, also the data will not be polluted if the source is okay. And also if the technology advance using the homomorphic encryption or zero knowledge proof, you can also kind of enhance the security side of it. So So again, it's a AI brokerage service, which you have the coordination effort, like you said. But eventually, it's really, when you look at the business, it's really a workflow process, or business process, right? So that's enabled by AI plus blockchain.
But then, if I may respond to you, I mean, blockchain is really more than just encryption, right? We have some algorithms for federated learning today that allow you to collect data from people without them fearing for the privacy of their data, right? So you mentioned homomorphic encryption. So we're beginning to know how to encrypt little blocks, data blocks uploaded from consumer devices. So we don't actually know what's in there, and we still can train machine learning models with them. But we're still doing that in a centralized way. So encrypted AI, encrypted machine learning, is less than blockchain.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. This is one part of it. I would say it's the most important part. Like yesterday, I was also in the panel with security. It's really the consensus. Really the decentralized, vastly distributed network. How do you reach the consensus on a business process? Like, so this is the AI brokerage service will play part of it using this decentralized network and the consensus. So this encryption or security is an extension of the blockchain. It's not really coming native with blockchain. It's the
So that's excellent. So, guys, we've already talked a little bit. I mean, these are very helpful. One of the points that's made is fake data, right, or altered data, and potentially using AI or blockchain technology to correct that or to monitor it and identify it. But more broadly, though, that raises issues on both sides. What's the data set that you're using? How do we know if the data set is valid? What do we do with invalid data sets? How does that play into your thinking on this? And I'm going to ask this generally with no particular order. Or if that's not the issue that really is going to be your issue, what is going to be? What do you see as the biggest issues in merging AI and blockchain technology?
Well, the biggest issue is the outright accessibility of the data. Data that comes from blockchain ledgers is, well, transparent in the sense that it's there and you could theoretically go pull it out of the Bitcoin or Ethereum blockchain. Actually making sense of what's there requires a significant amount of technical and domain expertise. And so until we've built up some of the plumbing and infrastructure that maps the data that you can find there into sort of human interpretable, or at least sort of SQL queryable or otherwise business end user accessible data, it's not going to be used as a source for AI in any mainstream applications.
Other thoughts?
So in terms of the data, like when it's original from source or from the sensor, that AI and the blockchain cannot really solve it. So it's alone again. That's why there's IoT or blockchain plus IoT. And there's a monitoring of the sensor data, like there is some research on this area. And somehow you can uniquely mapping the physical data to the blockchain data, which is once it's digitalized, it's in the blockchain, then you can make sure it's secure or it's immutable, right? But before that step, this is really hard problem to solve, and there's no perfect solution. It also depends on the use case, also different industry, right? If it's really a kind of a diamond industry, the average, maybe some of you know the average, they have the diamond, you can uniquely identify this using certain machine to have, like if you have identical look like diamond, but it will have very different physical kind of fingerprint, then you can do it. But not everything like this. So this is a hard problem. I think it's not just blockchain. Unless you 3D printing it, then it's okay. Like you have the 3D model in the blockchain, you print this physical asset using the 3D printing, then it's all in the closed loop, then it's okay. But not everything is like this.
Okay, so I'd like to comment. I've been working a lot on generative applications of artificial intelligence recently, and in this field, like she mentioned, generative adversarial networks and so on, in this field, the improvements are actually very significant in 2017, and in many applications, artificial intelligence can generate data that is very close to the training data. And I expect it to improve again very significantly over the next year and in the future. And I think that it will bring challenges to like verification or authentication systems because like artificial intelligence can generate samples that are very close to real samples. But just to clarify, in order to train these systems that can generate very high quality data, you again need very high amount of training data which you need to collect from like either different products or from different data sets or from like different potential blockchain technologies.
So I have a question for you then. In the context of identifying whether things are real or not real, do you see that a relevance to the blockchain as a place where the real transactions are occurring, where you couldn't go back and say inject into a blockchain ledger a set of events, even if they were trained very carefully to have all of the same statistical properties as the real events, and even trained because they were collected off of the history of the blockchain? I kind of see that looping back, and there's no way to re-inject the fake data into the record in this case.
I think it's a technical question, so it might be solved by the design of the blockchain itself. So you might design it in such a way that, like, in order to generate such maybe data, the amount of power and money you spend is maybe much less than mining, much more than mining. So there's no incentive to do that. So it can be a part of maybe blockchain design.
Or how you collect the data. Like, for example, if you were trying to authenticate photos, you could use sensor data on the camera and then hash the photo and then upload it to the blockchain. But it would, so it could be on how you collect the data to make sure that the data is authentic as opposed to like mimicking the data.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at actually, that if you had a real photo and you had the modified photo, if the real photo's hash was on the blockchain, even if you could make something that looked a lot like that photo, that you would be able to prove that it wasn't the original photo because there's no way to inject the fake video's hash into the place that you're authenticating against.
Yes.
So this happens, which is probably more focused perhaps on investment considerations, at least to some extent. As you think about what's going on, or about where the intersection of AI and blockchain is going to be, what are key things that are going to scare you away from a blockchain project or from an AI blockchain project? What doesn't make sense? What's a bad use case here? What's a bad investment situation?
I actually, again, you were on this side of the panel, and we have our thought process in kind of a different way. I know that probably among the audience, lots of entrepreneurs here, and if you really look at this new world of this so-called blockchain or cryptocurrency or CC, there are two types of companies. One called company that was born completely, we call pure play, for this blockchain or CC. And then there's legacy or existing companies that try to leverage this whole thing, try to, either we call the first group called revolution, the second one called evolution, to try to make things better. So I will see that the thing scared me of the whole thing when I think about this whole thing is this new world of the cryptocurrency world is happening. It's going to completely changing the way the people run the company, also changing the way that VC is going to invest, because there will be no angel investment, Series A, Series B, corporate governance, some shareholder, some equity board director. There's no such kind of thing. There will completely companies start from their very, very infant stage and become almost called the IPO company, which here is called ICO company. And then the way the mindset is totally different. That's where it scared me off. as a traditional VC, that's why I spent lots of our time. We set dedicated a small team, a number of our firm, with the very young, our colleagues who are born in their early 30s, and say, you guys need to be doing, I don't want to encourage other people because the mindset, almost like you have to throw out complete the whole framework in order to start the whole thing. So that's where I see it. So now the question would be, for those of you who are sitting here can start with the pure play, would you, in their mind, I'm thinking they're going to disrupt all those people. I know it'll take maybe 10, 15 years, but however, if you look back, the Google, the Facebook, all those work, they start from pure play at the time of internet. Now they are disrupting the old world, right? So this is where I think it's more profound for people to bear in mind the revolution is coming, these new big things will probably stay here, not like, unfortunately, VR, wearable devices or drone or something. Well, there was happening. This is something that I think that's my view.
For us, I mean, it's primarily two basic things. One is the concern around how quickly or how easily will customers be willing to adopt this technology, and so how monetizable is the solution, and we look at time horizons. And so if this is something that we don't think is what customers will adopt for the next 4 or 5 years, it just becomes harder for us to put too much money into a capital-intensive business knowing that monetization is not going to happen for a long time. And then the other side of the story is, if you think about blockchain, it's really about marketplaces. And so how do you create a marketplace, and how do you incentivize people to be part of the blockchain and either share their data, share things, and know that they will get compensated in the right way for that. Some of it, I mean, we do today anyway, so if you have a Nest device at home, I mean, you're already sharing your data with Google, you get paid for it. And so some of it might be easier for customers to digest, but when it comes to PII data, when it comes to health records, it becomes a tougher conversation. And so how easy will it be for customers as well to be a part of this marketplace and to be able to share data? I mean, those would be two of the basic primary concerns before we even get into the technology side.
I'm actually very optimistic about the future of cryptocurrency in the e-commerce world. Part of the reason is adoption, as she rightly said. Now, let me just ask you guys, what do you think out of the total retail in this country, what percentage is e-commerce, which includes the likes of Amazon.com? You guys are all shoppers there. What would be a rough estimate?
20%.
20%. Anybody else? 32?
3%.
3%.
75.
75. 52. Good guesses, but it's 9.1%. I mean, isn't that surprising? It was surprising to me, and I have been in e-commerce for a long time. I mean, what it tells me is that there is more than 90% of retail that we can actually have on the e-commerce side, and nobody has to go to the brick and mortar stores. That opens up a lot of possibilities, including cryptocurrency, robotics, automation, supply chain, artificial intelligence in supply chain, and stuff like that. So, I'm really looking forward to that moment.
I did not merely mean to exclude that side.
Maybe I add on one point. I think the biggest risk for AI and blockchain, or for any blockchain project, is really the regulation. Coming from working in China for 2 years. Originally, I worked at CGI, then I worked for Huawei for 2 years. And look at the regulation in China. The regulators don't really understand the decentralized business. So they kind of ban the exchange. The effect of ban the exchange is now they cannot regulate those people. So it's more risky for the investor. So it's in terms of AI and the blockchain, like if the regulators, they are not innovating, they have really don't understand. Like they have the mindset of the traditional business. They try to regulate that will be hard. Like if you have a AI and a blockchain company, eventually the regulation coming say, hey, you cannot do this kind of transaction. It's this is limited. Then all your businesses you invest, right? That's an issue.
Yeah, that's also a little bit my echo on that point. I personally, I've been entrepreneur myself. I had 3 startups before. But now, before I become VC, but I've never seen that the entrepreneur now start up the company to be concerned to be in jail. Maybe it's too much, but can be somehow, in the situation, very much. So this is, I would say the technology now actually is moving so fast, is go ahead of the regulation and the law and everything. So therefore, somehow you can be, I mean, for legitimate reason, good reason, that you're in trouble. So right, that kind of situation, that's one of the concerns that I would echo.
So one of the concerns that I have is that I see more and more projects that have sort of bolted on blockchain, and in some cases AI has fallen to the same thing, where they know that they can benefit from using it potentially, and there's buzz and there's attraction for investors, and people sort of get the story right enough, but that at the heart of their company, they don't actually understand how to leverage the technology appropriately. And in particular with the cryptocurrency space, people are launching ICOs because they can raise money they're almost treating it like a silver bullet, where in practice, a token is actually a digital representation of something. And if you don't actually start with the foundation of what is this a digital representation of, whether it's some financial instrument or a discrete asset or you can digitize deeds, you can digitize commodities. Like the idea here is that we've created these digital records that we have this complex but effective auditing of. I think we are seeing a little too much of people saying, oh, this is a great technology, I have to use it, I'm going to use it and raise money, not necessarily direct application. So I steer clear of anybody who can't actually step in and say, my tokens are representations of this form of value. It can be a financial value or it can be a software license, but it needs to be clear what it represents.
Any other thoughts?
So we have actually talked a lot about how blockchain might change artificial intelligence, but from other perspective, I think that artificial intelligence might also have applications in blockchain, and I think one straightforward one is like predicting the pricing and investment management correspondingly. So one of the, I guess, issues with cryptocurrency markets is that small portion of people have majority of the assets, and there are, I think, much more volatile movements and so on. And cryptocurrencies seem to be a bit older than other financial markets, so I think that probably there will be a lot of activities also applying algorithms based on artificial intelligence for pricing of cryptocurrencies.
So let me ask the panelists one last set of quick questions, or one last question, to see if I can get some quick thoughts on it, and see them get any audience questions. Given the way blockchain protocols are currently structured, does AI overpower the blockchain? Can existing protocols really handle the kind of computational power, the number of transactions, the amount of data that's going to be pulled and put back onto a blockchain? Can it work right now?
No.
It's opposite, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
I think the blockchain actually, especially for generation 1.0 and 2.0, now there's 3.0, right? I think at least 1.0 and 2.0, they become almost roadblock become the way that AI to handle the data.
And then on transactions. So I think the question was on transactions and can you move a lot of data on and off of blockchain?
Give the blockchain,
Yeah.
blockchain support that.
And when CryptoKitties happened, it basically crashed Ethereum, and now it's 20% of the Ethereum blockchain, and it just skyrocketed the transaction time and transaction price to get an Ether 20 token. And so you would have to develop new protocols to manage higher, faster transactions. Otherwise, then you would like replace like credit networks, but the transaction speed is too slow to do that right now.
I think that that's also constrained to whether you're thinking about sort of a general ledger for a large volume of transactions that is on a shared network. So the problem with Ethereum is that it's a virtual machine shared by everyone who's using Ethereum. So in practice, you see use case specific permission networks emerging on platforms like Quorum, where people can handle volume appropriate for the community being supported, but those are permission consortiums. You join a nonprofit entity, the entities run nodes in a permission network, that network services the transactional needs of that business ecosystem. That's scalable, but it's a chain of chains world, and that's sort of happening in parallel with people who are trying to solve scalability problems for the public networks.
So yeah, I think the current state of the blockchain for the business transactions or large-scale transactions, high frequency trading, it's not there yet. Also the AI, when it's coming, you do need a lot of enhancement. But there is a certain kind of area, blockchain and AI can help each other. One example is maybe some of you know the deep brain chain. They try to using blockchain to kind of democratizing the deep neural network training algorithm. Like you have a different mining machine. Actually, those mining machines are deep neural network training, right? And using the token, they have a token system. And so you have one request, it will be distributed to all these nodes, eventually coming up. So it can help the AI. But AI also somehow can help the blockchain in terms of optimize the consensus algorithm. So there is areas of interaction. Essentially, the question is really good. As the current state of the blockchain, it's not up to the production yet. Like CryptoKitty is an example, right? There's lots of other examples there's a transaction per second. Some people say, hey, we have a blockchain which is 1 million transactions per second, but it's in local network with a very small payload. That's not really a measurement, right? So you have to say it's in a vast distributed network. What's your transaction per second? Currently, I don't think one blockchain can boast more than 10,000 TPS or transactions per second.
Okay, I know I know we're sort of a bit late, so let me just see if the audience has any questions before we wrap up the panel. Have we answered all of your questions? Oh, great, there we go.
Okay, we build nonlinear machine learning models for consumer credit. And the machines that we use, the processor, it's a highly processor intensive process. So our typical production machine is 8 GPUs and 16 cores. So when we talk about distributed applications, obviously we're not going to distribute this in Solidity to cell phones, right? So the question is, how are we going to bridge the gap between necessary centralized systems for processing power and distributed systems for delivery? So I view a blockchain as a database, right, a distributed ledger, and I can write decisions into it. So we are using it for writing lending transactions into it. But it's not a processing vehicle. So it's the limitation of the distributed applications that concerns me, because when I go to conferences, I see this kind of naivete about the power of distributed networks, and having worked with distributed networks for a long time, I realize they're great, but they're not a panacea, and there are a lot of cases where they simply don't work. So how do we kind of bridge the gap and create the tools necessary to have APIs that allow us to effectively do highly computational processes outside the blockchain, and then integrate the blockchain as an immutable repository of decision?
So the general approach to dealing with computationally complex things in a blockchain architecture is to start by, I agree with you completely, it's actually not even a decentralized database because it's got, every node has a copy of the whole thing. So it's not even spread out, it's actually just copies. But you have to, if you have a node, then you have a full copy of the record of the history. And if you have some of your data infrastructure in the same cloud environment as that node, you can put together your environment that you would use to do your computationally complex, either in your private cloud or in a public cloud, and do locally computationally complex calculations to determine an action, and then attempt to take that action through your node, and the network is still going to validate whether that's acceptable. So in a sense, you can participate in a community that's governed by a blockchain, where your node is your actor in that community, but all of your intelligence is still a very centralized thing to you, and other participants in that same network would have their own centralized infrastructure and their own computationally complex infrastructure, or computationally complex tasks done in their own infrastructure to come to a decision, and it's only the blockchain's role to validate whether that was a legal action with respect to the other participants.
One more question. What about the environment where you actually do want to use the horsepower of these millions or hundreds of thousands of GPUs out there? Is there a current system that allow distributed processing on computationally intense things like deep learning and machine learning to happen on the existing sort of like everyone who's got a rack of rigs with 10 GPUs in it now? Can that be used for something productive?
I suppose someone could build a market for that resource, but that's still then not happening on the blockchain. The blockchain is governing the market for those resources.
Actually, it's more just a question of like, as we move from proof of work to proof of stake, there's a lot of machines, a lot of CPU power or GPU power that can be deployed to something useful. But you're not aware of any existing projects.
So I think one thing to note is that you get the benefit of the distributed computing, and you also optimize things like memory, communication speed, and so on. And if you consider high amount of distribution that you are utilizing, like GPU, software, power, users, and so on, I think it is far away from achieving something state of the art, given what we can achieve in the day, highly customized data centers of big technology companies.
So the current state is really, there is integration between the on-chain computation and off-chain computation, on-chain storage and off-chain storage, right? So the fact that exists because the current blockchain cannot really store all the data, so can sustain all the computation. The question specifically you ask is if there's a moving from the POW to POS, there's so many GPUs available. There is a DBC, like the deeper brain chain, they are trying to leverage those to see. Right, so you can take a look at this, but I'm not the advisor or something. I just looked at their web. It seems interesting, right? So you can take a look. I think eventually, that's my thinking, right? I still think the whole business process will be enabled by blockchain. And within that, there's a certain step you need the AI. Those AI can be powered by the AI blockchain service. And someone is doing it somehow, but I think it's still a long way. One example is Singularity Net, right? Some of you may know, right? Singularity Net is by Sophia. Some people know Sophia, right? The robot, right? So the one, Mr. Hansen, one of this, he is CTO of this one, right? But I think it's still in early stage. I'm not really to marketing for them, right? It's the whole thing, the AI for the blockchain is at the very beginning stage. One is really doing a platform as service, and another one, there's lots of people doing the specific applications, leverage blockchain and AI, such as the financial advisor, ICO compliance. There's a chain doing the ICO compliance also, using the AI, right? And also there is a chain doing the data getting from the SEC or the reporting for some public company doing some things to say, hey, is this stock you can invest or not? So there's a lot of business-based areas in the AI and blockchain. It's just the beginning, but we will see. One maybe will be the lab. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I think we're going to call it there. Turn it back over to Henry. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Now we can dive into second part, which is startup. Please be seated. It will take about 45 minutes. So those are a few of our selected featured startup both from around the globe, but also locally here. So guys, please, yeah, we're gonna have a networking session after. We're going to start from the first startup. So again, some are globally, some are here. We have a live stream. They can hear everything. We don't want them to call back because it's done in all the hassle, but we'll handle all communication in the background, okay? So the first one is ParkNav from Chicago. So again, each startup is using artificial intelligence at certain level. Some they're fully deployed, some partially, some planned. Okay, and then those video, if you wish, they're less about the pitch for money. It's more about an introduction of the company and specifically disruptive innovation. Some they did some awesome jobs, some are so-so, but that's startup work. And then each startup, we're going to open for about a minute or so from the panelists, and feel free to hit them positive or negative feedback. Okay? So we can start with the first one.
Driving always ends with a pain, finding parking. Driving always ends with a pain, finding parking. There are apps and services that help you reserve a garage spot or valet your car, but most drivers still choose to circle the block and look for open street parking. Who helps them? ParkNav informs drivers where there's open street parking in real time, 24/7. While doing this on a small scale is easy by installing sensors, those are expensive. ParkNav solves this problem by analyzing terabytes of data from many sources, leading to an 80% precision in ParkNav service. ParkNav's patented predictive precision further increases to 95% with the addition of data generated from users of the ParkNav mobile app. Customers of ParkNav are automakers and utility fleets that embed ParkNav street parking data into their GPS units, as well as real estate companies that use ParkNav's parking score to help their customers evaluate parking close to property listings. ParkNav has grown in the last 6 months to cover over 70 cities throughout the US and Germany, with many marquee customer sales pending on its desk. Now is your chance to join. Are you in? Driving always ends.
Okay, the panel, yours. Any positive or negative feedback to the startup they're listening? Please be free.
So it seems purely AI and machine learning, not blockchain. Seems, but seems interesting though. Yeah, I would to have this kind of APP to find the package.
You need massive data collection for this, which they never told us how they're doing. The data is time sensitive, so every minute of the day, every block of the block, every parking spot on the block, you need a data point. How are they going? How is the startup going to get that volume of data? Is not there from the ditch?
Awesome, excellent question. So if you don't mind, I'll turn around because next one will be on site.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, just 30-second pitch about this startup. Actually, that's like perfect use case for one traction. One traction, what we do is, as the name said it, we help startup getting their first one interaction. And what does it mean? It means the first customer has a 4500 or the first customer has a 4500 pass through to paying customer. And this is a perfect use case. Stanford scientists, some of the software technology behind it, I'm not allowed to go deep to the weed, but you can take it offline. But success metrics, you heard how many countries they're already in, they're going to open in, they already have double digit in terms of millions in terms of revenue. And their product, it is already on a top 3 luxury brand deployed on 2018 model. Okay, Germany, US, and moving real fast. All this sort of, yeah. And yeah, so we're happy to connect you with the founder. He's already listening. So if you're listening, Ilya from Google, that's his question. And then let's move on to the next one. So Han, number 2.
Hello, my name is Hon with the Tyrus 3D. So as you can see the 3D, so yeah, my company is making the metal 3D printer. So maybe I mean the right. So I have like there's a few hardware company, startup company in the Silicon Valley. So I have the physical some form to my panel anyway. So actually the Tyrus 3D brings smart metal 3D printer within our reach. Compare with the metal 3D printer, I compare with the metal 3D printer. So traditional metal manufacturing is limited since it is inefficient and time consuming, and also expensive and complex, and also a barrier to creating the innovative and new part and new design. So as you can see my part, from my 3D printer. So you can fabricate the complex and the customizer part within the reduced cost and time. So according to the market research, the global production manufacturing industry is about the 10.5 trillion, and the machine tool market, including CNC, is around 181.5 billion. And the current metal 3D printer market is around 1 billion last year. But the demand for the metal in the 3D printing is getting bigger right now. And but still, the current metal 3D printer is inefficient. The lack of the connectivity and inconsistent with the quality. Also, highly expensive and difficult to use. The Tyrus 3D offer the intelligent and robust, also easy to use machine at affordable price. So we do have a lot of project with our customer, they make part for the one of the biggest dental lab in North America. And we also making part for the aerospace and automotive customer. So we are developing our machine based with the blockchain for the transparency and validation and the security. Also, we are using the machine learning for the performance and quality, and closed loop and the IoT for the connectivity and repeatability. We have the founding member have a lot of experience in telecommunication and 3D printer aerospace. Also the semiconductor and software in the Silicon Valley and as well as the international market. And we do have also the several experts in blockchain and patent and mechanical engineering and additive manufacturing and material science. So, so we try to deliver the ultimate the smart machine for the future the manufacturing. So we are looking for the corporate partner, and also we are looking for the additional funding for the development and additional the manufacturing.
Thank you. Wondering if you have any question for him, the panelists, please.
Two questions. One question would be, are you traditional 3D printer companies, or are you somehow blockchain or something Would
So,
you
yeah.
Number two is, are you raising capital, the fiat money, or are you raising tokens? Which means, are you equity type of company, or are you, you know what I'm saying, the cryptocurrency type of company, which means, you know, there's no.
So, as you mentioned before, like you asked me like why the company, hardware company is here, right? So we are kind of like evolving the company, not the revolution. So as you mentioned before, but when you try to make some part for the aerospace or some other medical, so security and quality is very, the critical issue, for the customer. So especially like the metal, 3D printer, unlike, the plastic, so we have to spend a lot of time for the processing knowledge or something like that. So no one like the validated kind of thing, because there are a few experts in North America now. So that's why we try to adopt the blockchain for the validation and transparency for the final product. So we are not raising like the IC or something like that. We just adopt the best way for the coloring part for the 3D printer.
So you mentioned corporate partnership is what you're looking for. What is the kind of application there?
Actually, right now we are working with some other semiconductor company for the repair or the aftermarket part. Also, like we're working with some other defense company for the repair part also. So.
So now we're going to move in another continent of Europe. We're going to go to Germany. Virtually.
Is with me from BigChain DB. Your goal is to make a blockchain database for the world.
Yes.
That's ambitious, or not?
The internet was ambitious. The internet exists, right? And we want to help upgrade the internet with the technology that we can provide, and BigChain DB can be a piece of that, right? We also see, though, that it's not just about a public database for the planet. This sort of technology can be highly useful within enterprises for financial, for banking, etc., where privacy does matter and close. So you can roll this software, BigChain DB software, however you like, in whatever federation.
What would be the advantage of having a worldwide database for blockchain?
Yeah, so after we released BigChain DB, and even before, we've been in the field since before it was a field called blockchain for several years, and we've identified a lot of different applications, and you can kind of group them into about 5 applications areas: identity, intellectual property, financial, energy, and supply chain. So among these, the first 2, identity and intellectual property, are much more things that need public angles, very strong public angles. Intellectual property, you have the cultural commons. You really want to make sure that the world's art and artifacts can be accessible to people broadly. And that, therefore, sort of by definition, you need a public database. Identity as well. This is something where multiple people can plug in various ways. Of course, you need privacy controls here and there in the right places, but it's something where it's best as a global public database as opposed to one database controlled by some very tight, small set of organizations, especially ones that care about dollars. So those are the 2 main applications, identity and intellectual property, that really fit the public database the best. A lot of supply chain applications fit there as well, but less so for things like the financial applications.
Okay, but I understand. But the world is organized in countries, so you have to work around that fact.
Yeah.
Around countries are organized, and what you do is you put a worldwide database. But how do countries interfere with your idea?
Yeah. So in general, we take the attitude that it's very useful to work within the law and work within the bounds of the law, and when you can, actually to help augment the existing systems in a way that helps the creators, etc. So for example, with intellectual property, right now copyright laws exist, right? But if I'm a creator and someone rips off my work, how do I prove that it was me? Or if I go to a court of law with evidence, what evidence can I provide to help show that it was me? And this is where blockchain technology, timestamping, can help, right? So this is an example where we're working with existing copyright laws rather than trying to say we need to reinvent IP. Now, IP laws throughout the world have a lot of problems, but we need to build bridges. So we don't advocate, rewriting laws right now for the world, but we do advocate, here's what you can do with technology now, work within the law of the now, and bit by bit, build bridges to the new world.
But you want to stay out of the financial world?
No. So BigchainDB is a piece of software. One of the networks of BigchainDB is IPDB, Interplanetary Database. It is a network that is a planetary database. It's a public instance of BigchainDB for the world. But there are many other instances of BigchainDB that people can roll how they like, right? So, for example, Everledger is rolling one for diamonds, right? With diamond mines and certification houses, etc. And banks and financial institutions in general are rolling various instantiations of BigchainDB for their own purposes, whether it be for exchanges or for remittance or whatever. So if you think about databases in general, right? Like any big company probably has 10 or 500 different databases that they roll, right? And each one has different purposes. You've got SQL databases, you've got document stores, all these graph databases. Well, now, in addition to these existing databases that they can have databases that allow them to work in consortiums, right? It's consortium databases. That's really what a blockchain database is. When approached from the angle of the enterprise, it's a database that allows competitors or companies that are maybe complementary but within an ecosystem, and allows them to work together, sharing data without fully having to trust each other, right?
Where are you now in developing this database?
Yeah, so we started work last summer, quietly, and we released the first version of it in February as alpha. Now we've released, I think, it was version 0.1. Now it's at version 0.4.1, I believe. It's still alpha, but we are getting closer and closer towards production all the time. So people are downloading it and running it and testing it right now, to do proofs of concept. It's fine. And where we're headed is we're targeting for production versions as soon as 6 months from now. So for people to be running in production. What's very nice is that we built on top of an existing distributed database that has been hardened over many, many years. So we didn't have to rewrite everything from scratch. We have a layer on top of this existing distributed database that adds decentralization, decentralized control.
And who are your launching clients?
So when we launched in February, the launching client was Everledger, which is Diamonds in the Blockchain. There are several other clients that we have made public. So this includes Tangent 90, which is basically for transparency in the medical supply chain. We're working with several consulting firms, big ones, small ones. Some of those are public, so Capgemini, for example, we publicly announced that we're working with them. There's one or two that I think that we announced last week. There's others too that they tell us that they're using us, and it makes us very happy, so we don't have to announce. So Ben, for example, which is a land registry in Ghana, they're using us, they publicly announced. Or Electron, which is an electricity startup out of the UK. They publicly announced they're using us. We're also working with RWE, which is Germany's largest electric utility. Electric utilities fit really well because of deregulation. So it's the same thing as decentralization. You deregulate via decentralization.
But why would RWE, the energy company, need a worldwide database?
So remember, RWE themselves, they're a big organization, right? They have a whole bunch of different applications, and with different applications, they've been rolling out prototypes for this. Things like charging electric cars or energy exchange markets, etc., right? So for each of these different applications, it could be a different network, or it could be on this overall global public database that is IPDB. It's their choice, right? And so, in some cases, it really makes sense to use the global public database. Things like IoT applications where you kind of want to see everything and you want to make it visible to everyone. But there's no need, for example, for the whole world to see how much electricity every single house has. You don't want to put meters from houses public, that's actually very dangerous, right? So with all this, there's always deep considerations you need to do that reconcile, transparency desires with privacy desires, right? And it really depends on the application.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
1 minute of time for you, the panelists. Question, public share. Positive, negative feedback, please feel free.
I think the term worldwide database, it's long term because the data really is a territory. U.S. government will not allow the citizen data of U.S. to be placed in other country. In Europe, there's a so-called the GDPR, like General Data Protection Regulation, also stipulates that you cannot. So, but there's a point to make which is correct. Trent, I know him very well. I worked with him. The big DB, I have been working with them since I was in Huawei. So I think the key concept behind the big chain DB is a good concept because it's integrating the blockchain with the big data, and both has their pros and cons. So it's integrated them so both leverage the pros, right? But I think the concept for worldwide database should not. It's really the big chain DB, the big data for the database, for the blockchain. That's the term they should use.
It seems to me that there's a sort of open source infrastructure sort of business model going on here, where as I see the global chain that they're talking about here as being something that they're offering to the community to use, but their actual business model works around these enterprise use cases, and that insofar as making the big chain DB public and getting people to contribute and trying to use it in the public sense leads to hardening and improving the quality of the software that they're using to build these consortium or enterprise networks, then I think it makes a lot of sense, even if it doesn't immediately yield a global public blockchain database that we're all using.
Well, I think he's not talking about what's his revenue model or business model. Is he selling the software like a SaaS model, or is like the more, again, going the cryptocurrency way to no longer issue coins or something? And also for a small company to going after the global market, it's a little bit too ambitious at this time.
Thanks to the panelists. We can move on to the next one. So Sergey from MOM.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us present here. I'm honored. My name is Sergey Shendrov. I am the CEO and co-founder of MomLife. And by the end of my delivery, I hope it will be apparent what venues we can pursue with artificial intelligence projects developers. But we are first and foremost a consumer product and company. And we're building a digital economy for modern moms, and we aim to be the platform for economic opportunity for moms worldwide. Now, we have worked with this demographic for more than 10 years, since the time when my partner and I have launched and subsequently developed the largest user-generated content platform for moms in Europe. That is called Babyblog, and now reaches more than 43 million unique users. Babyblog has taught us a few things about moms, but one thing that really stood out is the social engagement of moms on young moms on an early stage of their maternity and during pregnancy, which had this visceral need to connect with peers and go through these experiences that are difficult and emotionally and physically challenging for them with people who are going through exactly the same at exactly the same time. So around this social phenomenon, we have launched MomLife, which is really a WeChat for moms, and it reaches more than 1.1 million unique users now, but it's the most engaged mobile app in any category that I have heard of. It engages women for more than an hour per day per user on average, so it's more than Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger combined based on their own data. It is the largest source of user-generated content in the parenting vertical in the world right now, and it's a treasure trove of data. It's got more daily posts than 10 times more daily posts than all the social properties of Baby Center that some of you may be familiar with in the US. It is venture-backed and it's cash generative, drives revenue from advertising sales to more than 100 international brands, which are who's who in the CPG and FMCG space. And where does the digital economy and cryptocurrency come in? Well, you have to understand something about our demographic. I'll give you a couple of statistics that I found shocking about the US market. In particular, 50% of births are to single moms here, and 50% of births for the past 5 years have been supported by Medicaid, which literally means that the majority of our audience is looking for every way to make money online. Well, this is exactly what we deliver with the digital economy and cryptocurrency that services a plethora of economic relationships that already exist on our platform between moms, ourselves as platform, and all the third parties who are on one hand are already paying us for the attention of those moms in fiat in the form of advertising. On the other, want to market to moms everything that is advertised, be it content, goods, or services. So it's a sandbox economy where a native currency supports the GDP based on economic activities of this demographic that is roughly 20% of population in any market that we're focusing on, and roughly 80% of consumer spending decision making. And the currency is an instrument of financial inclusion and economic empowerment for them.
Thank you. So, given to stick on time, we have a lot of stuff to cover. We have 3-second question to all the feedback to the panelists.
Why do you need a native currency? It definitely seems like you could build the incentive structures you want and make the connections that you want using, even if you use blockchain and cryptocurrency tools, you can facilitate that without a new token for that economy.
The token, the native token crystallizes the value of the network that we include now the moms into. We are passing the advertising revenue and all the other revenues that we may drive as the network operators, for example, utilizing data, which we have more per user than anything I know, again, in other verticals and other demographics. All that can be monetized by drawing direct engagement commercially between moms and those who are after their data or their attention. And the currency encapsulates the value of the platform and the value of the growth of the platform. Therefore, if we used Ether, it would not grow in value just based on the activity of our demographic. Whereas the currency that focuses on economic relationship of this demographic in all the countries where we are present can represent the value of the network, and moms are direct economic stakeholders in.
Thank you, Sergey. You're more than welcome to follow up offline. One key metrics about Sergey and place of attraction, they already have over 1 million users globally. Okay? Now we move to the next one, SapientX, which takes it to the whole different dimension.
Yes.
Hi, this is David Colleen. I'm CEO and co-founder of Sapient. X and AI. Hi, this is David Colleen. I'm CEO and co-founder of Sapient. CEO and co-founder of SapientX, an AI startup in San Francisco. Sorry, I can't be with you today. I'm working with customers here in Japan, so I've asked our avatar, Alfie, to tell you all about the company. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Alfie. I've been part of the SapientX team from the beginning. We've built a digital brain that can add intelligence and a voice to technology products.
What's your vision?
Imagine a world where you're able to talk to your technology products, they understand you and act on your behalf. We're building that world.
Why are you better?
We use a radically different approach to AI that doesn't require big data or even an internet connection, and it's so efficient, with it even runs on a watch. It's natural to compare me to Siri and Alexa, but we'll never directly compete against them because...
How are you different?
SapientX's brain uses an internet connection. It's encrypted. You can't just send sensitive patient data to Seattle. And you wouldn't be sending automotive user data to Cupertino.
What else can you do?
Another thing Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft don't do. The SapientX brain can control the delicate movements of a robot. It can drive your car to Seattle. It can even read your base medical data records to become a key part of a healthcare system.
Is there more?
The brain also controls our high-resolution avatars and understands a user's emotion and in turn respond with emotion, leading to 40% higher user satisfaction. This makes sense because 70% of all communication is nonverbal.
What markets are you working in?
We're working with Mitsubishi and LG on next-generation automotive systems in a $1 billion market growing at 39%. By the way, we just agreed to a 3-year development deal with Mitsubishi to add our digital brain to their new cars.
Who else are you working with?
We're also working with 2 companies in robotics, a $6 billion market with a 38% growth rate.
Sounds impressive.
AI companies are getting acquired rapidly. We've already begun funding and M&A discussions with Samsung, Mitsubishi, and LG. Our coming out event is at CES in January, where we have a booth. We think this public launch will fuel other serious acquisition discussions.
Who might acquire you?
We are seeking strategic partnerships and follow-up funding. Thanks for your time. We will be happy to answer your questions afterwards.
So very funny input for you, just to be fair to, and this again, that's where his entrepreneurship mind about the Silicon Valley about it, and the whole 9 yards. So we have very big introduction for them, so we asked them to be here, they cannot. Then, why don't you send us your best video? The video come crappy. And they're like, I'm gonna put my name to your video, okay? And like, well, we in the hotel, we barely check in, like flying, this is a recorded video, unacceptable. And then what do Cohen come with this brain? I'm like, wait a minute, can I ask you a question? Yes. Is that okay to ask one of our product to pitch? Like, what are you talking about? Well, because our product is a raw artificial intelligence, actually, we can make one for you, we can add that as a co-founder. That's an awesome idea. Don't sleep, make it happen. True story. This was actually, I was like 1 a.m. talking to them, like, I'm gonna go to sleep, you only have one chance, okay? Always gonna go to sleep. I'm like, you will have it by 7:30 a.m. on to sleep. So that was actually the most beautiful email I ever get. That's the story. Okay, 1 minute question or feedback to Dev, hope you're listening.
So my feedback is that I think that there was not that much clarity about different technologies they are using, but they promise that these technologies were without needing that much data. But for all of the, I think, tasks like speech understanding, language understanding, language generation, speech synthesis, it has been shown that the state-of-the-art systems, which significantly outperform the past, are based on huge amounts of data. So I wonder what type of techniques they use and how they can outperform them, and what is actually their state-of-the-art, because it was not too convincing to me.
David, you heard it. You can reply to the protocol, and then we can connect you in the background. Also, we can move to the next one. So, John, are you here? Yes. And again, things happen on the fly with startup because you're out of time, and next session is coming up, to be fair to everyone. So last batch will have half time, which is 2 minutes, which means 1 minute you just cover what, who, and for who. 1 minute, and then we'll meet for questions. Go.
Okay, good, great. I'm John from Canaptic. We're a technology development company, and we're creating the hardware and software tools that are going to disrupt the multi-trillion-dollar healthcare industry by leveraging AI and the blockchain. I know it's a very ambitious goal, but we're going to be one of the contributors to this very important aspect of the evolution of technologies. So what we're doing is creating a wearable electronic that allows you to detect, analyze, and apply electrical signals to and from the human body. Our team comes out of MIT and Harvard. We're doing 2 projects with groups at MIT. One of the disruptive technologies we're working is to apply our technology for controlling robots and drones, and we're leveraging our technology along the way. We've got an MVP that's being in discussions with the world's largest drugstore chain to introduce as a product at 150 store test market, and we see a lot of great promise for our technology and the evolution of the blockchain and AI.
Awesome. You can sit for 1 minute. Okay. 1 minute question, please, for the parents.
So you mentioned electrical signals. Why electrical signals? Because a lot of the health situations are detected by optical signals and high frequency.
Yeah, the optical signals are possible. Sweat chemistry is another possibility depending on the form of the sensor, but the main thrust of it is that we're going to be collecting the biometric data that we generate. I generate gigabytes of biometric data by walking down the hall here. That data isn't used for anything at this point. I only get to check it once a year. That's the only time that my body is really being checked. Yet all of us can be contributing to a vast amount of important information about the machines that we are, the human body. Once that collection of data is acquiesced into a blockchain format, it can be mined for pattern recognition using AI, and I think we're going to start to see a lot of preventative aspects of our own bodies, biometrics being used to make us all healthier.
Thank you very much, John. You can always follow up offline. You're more than welcome to join it with him. And John, please stay here so we can connect with you offline, okay?
Thank you.
So number 7 is Raj. I think you may want to be here. Raj, if you're here, please come here, okay? And I don't know if you don't mind, you can do it either way. You have 2 minutes, you can play your video or you can speak. Which one?
I don't have a video. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Raj, co-founder of Quick. We basically think about a problem like, everyday employees has to struggle with, juggle with multiple systems to get the job done. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to solve this problem by coming up with a conversation platform for enterprise solutions. Our platform can interact, customers can interact using any of these platforms like Facebook, Slack, or Skype, any other social media platforms they can use to interact with enterprise systems. We also have the voice recognition capabilities, which will allow systems to, employees to talk to the systems like talking to Alexa or Siri. We are preferred partners for SAP to build the bots for utilities and manufacturing industries. And we are also part of the SAP Customer Engagement Initiative program, where we work with the SAP customers directly. And we are also working with Salesforce to build the bots for customer success platform as well.
Thank you. One question, 1 minute from the panel, please.
Is this more of a consolidation across different enterprise solutions
Yes.
that exist?
Yes. Sure. So our bot platform can talk to multiple enterprise systems and help the customers to interact multiple systems in a single bot.
When you say customers, these are employees?
It could be B2B or B2C. Our solution can get
like a chatbot?
Yes.
Thank you. Idonai, sorry. Forgive me if I misspell your name. Are you here? Idonai. Okay, 15 seconds, yes, no? Okay, gone. Cameron. This is your lucky strike, so you can get the double jackpot, so you can get 4 minutes.
All right. Well, the reason I'm here is basically I'm working on a project for the silicon anode in lithium-ion batteries. Right now, as you all have, is one of those electronic devices in your hands, and I'm sure you all want to have a battery that would last much longer. A lot of people are working today on lithium-ion because it's one of the better versions of rechargeable batteries. But silicon anode that's being used in some of these lithium-ion batteries is the problem because it provides better capacity, but what happens is when it receives lithium ions, it expands, and then when it contracts and expands and contracts, it breaks. And so basically the battery stops, working. The other problem that they are having is the cost. Right now, if you increase the capacity of a battery, so the charge of the money that they charge you is going to go up. What we have come up with is a solution to prevent the anode, the silicon anode, from breaking. We have what they're using, basically what they call is a porous anode. And porous anode is basically, that means if this is your anode made out of silicon, they only partially make it porous. And what we have come up with is a process where it's completely porous. And so if it starts cracking, there's crack eliminators in there, as well as even if it breaks, the connection does not break at all. So that's one way of improving it. And the other thing is that a lot of these are using, for example, solar industry process. With that, it usually is about 50 to 60 steps. We have cut it down to almost a third, if not less than that. So that brings the cost of equipment, the cost of manufacturing, the cost of getting licenses, and also the number of employees down. With that, we can make the parts anywhere in the world without seeing much difference in the cost of manufacturing. So this way, we are improving the efficiency, we're improving the cycle life, but at the same time, we're cutting the cost down, which actually would be to your benefit. So basically, we're looking for $1.28 million in seed money.
Thank you. Now to the panelists, you have, guys, 1 minute.
What stage of your company or in terms of also product?
Right now, we are basically looking for money to build the parts.
You have a prototype ready?
No, that's what the big companies are right now looking for. If we had the prototype, basically they would be our partners.
Okay. Where do you think your innovation is from? Is from your many years of the industry experience, or are you from some kind what kind of breakthrough?
No, I have 36 years of experience in semiconductor, in thermoelectric, solar, and lithium-ion battery. I have 18 patents right now in those areas.
So we're going to pause here again. Let's give an awesome applause for our distinguished panel. Another applause to you guys for coming here to listen to us. And then obviously part of that, the entrepreneur here. So you're more than welcome to stay for next session, which also will be promising to be very promising. And then feel free to continue the conversation offline between investor and entrepreneur, all the way to write him a check as of here. Or you need just buy us coffee next time you see us on the street. Thank you.